Hello everyone, and welcome back to History of the Ancient World. Today, we're journeying back in time over 6,000 years to a land nestled between two mighty rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. This region, known as Mesopotamia, meaning the land between the rivers, was the cradle of one of humanity's earliest and most influential civilizations, Sumer. Forget what you think you know about ancient life. The Sumerians weren't just simple farmers, they were innovators, city builders, and pioneers who laid the groundwork for much of the world we live in today. So, grab your metaphorical sun hat, because we're about to step into the bustling streets of a Sumerian city and discover what daily life was really like. The story of Sumer begins around 4500 BC. Small agricultural communities began to flourish in the Fertile Crescent, thanks to the rich soil deposited by the annual flooding of the rivers. But the Sumerians did something remarkable. They didn't just passively accept the gift of nature. They mastered it. They engineered complex irrigation systems, building canals, dikes, and reservoirs to control the floodwaters and direct them to their fields. This agricultural revolution led to a surplus of food, which was the catalyst for everything that followed. With more food than they needed to survive, people could specialize in other trades. Suddenly you had artisans, priests, merchants, and builders. This specialization led to the birth of the world's first true cities, magnificent urban centers like Uruk, Ur, and Eridu. Imagine walking through the city of Uruk around 3000 BC. This wasn't a small village, it was a sprawling metropolis, home to tens of thousands of people, enclosed by massive defensive walls. The streets would be a vibrant, chaotic mix of sights and sounds. You'd see merchants haggling over prices, craftsmen hammering away in their workshops, and children chasing stray dogs through narrow, winding alleyways. The houses were typically made of sun-dried mud bricks, clustered together, often with a central courtyard, to provide light and air. The wealthier citizens might have larger, two-story homes, while the average person lived in a more modest, single-room dwelling. But regardless of wealth, life revolved around the community and the temple. And at the heart of every Sumerian city stood a massive, terraced, pyramid-like structure called a ziggurat. This wasn't just a building, it was the religious, economic, and political center of the city. The ziggurat was dedicated to the city's patron god or goddess, and the Sumerians believed these deities actually lived in the shrine at the very top. Priests and priestesses were incredibly powerful figures in society. They managed the temple's vast landholdings, collected taxes in the form of grain and livestock, and conducted the elaborate religious rituals needed to keep the gods happy. The Sumerians had a complex pantheon of gods and goddesses who controlled every aspect of the natural world, from the sun and moon to the wind and rain. Appeasing them was a matter of life and death, ensuring a good harvest and protection from disaster. So what did the average Sumerian do all day? Well, for most, life was tied to the land. Farmers would rise at dawn to tend their fields of barley, wheat, and dates. They used simple wooden plows, often pulled by oxen. It was hard, back-breaking work under the hot Mesopotamian sun. Meanwhile, in the city, artisans were busy creating the goods that made Sumerian civilization famous. Potters spun clay on a revolutionary new invention, the potter's wheel, crafting everything from simple bowls to ornate decorative vases. Metalworkers smelted copper and later bronze to forge tools, weapons, and intricate jewelry. Weavers created fine textiles from wool and flax. These goods weren't just for local use. Sumerian merchants traveled far and wide by donkey caravan and by boat along the rivers and into the Persian Gulf, trading their grain, textiles, and finished goods for timber, stone, and precious metals from distant lands. One of the most profound innovations of the Sumerians was, without a doubt, writing. As their society grew more complex, they needed a way to keep track of trade, taxes, and temple inventories. Around 3500 BC, they developed a system of pictographs that gradually evolved into a sophisticated script we call cuneiform. Using a stylus made from a reed, they pressed wedge-shaped marks into soft clay tablets. These tablets were then baked in the sun, creating a permanent record. initially used for accounting, cuneiform soon blossomed into a medium for literature, law, history, and personal letters. They wrote down epic poems like the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the world's oldest surviving works of literature. They codified their laws, most famously in the Code of Urnamu, which predates the more famous Code of Hammurabi by centuries. Thanks to the durability of these clay tablets, we have an incredibly detailed window into their world. Now let's talk about the social structure. Sumerian society was highly stratified. At the very top was the king, or Lugal, who was seen as the god's representative on earth. Below him were the priests and priestesses, who held immense influence. Then came the wealthy merchants, scribes, and high-ranking military officials. The largest class was the commoners, the farmers, artisans, and laborers, who formed the backbone of the economy. At the very bottom were the enslaved people, who were typically prisoners of war or individuals who had fallen into debt. While social mobility was not common, it wasn't impossible. A clever scribe or a successful soldier could potentially rise in status. Family was the cornerstone of Sumerian life. Marriages were typically arranged by the parents, and a formal contract would be drawn up on a clay tablet. Women's rights were surprisingly progressive for the ancient world. They could own property, run businesses, and even initiate divorce under certain circumstances. However, society was still patriarchal, and a woman's primary role was seen as managing the household and raising children. Education was highly valued, but was generally reserved for the sons of the wealthy and powerful. They would attend an eduba, or tablet house, where they would spend years learning the difficult art of cuneiform to become scribes, the administrators, and intellectuals of their time. Of course, life wasn't all work. The Sumerians enjoyed music, feasts, and games. Archaeologists have found evidence of lyres and harps, and cylinder seals depict lavish banquets with music and dancing. They also played board games, like the royal game of Ur, a beautifully crafted game set that was discovered in a royal tomb. These moments of leisure provided a welcome respite from the hardships of daily life. Life expectancy was short, disease was common, and the threat of war between the competing city-states was ever present. The legacy of Sumer is simply staggering. Think about it. They invented the wheel, not just for pottery, but for transportation in the form of chariots. They developed the plow, revolutionizing agriculture. They created the arch, the dome, and complex architectural principles. They divided the hour into 60 minutes and the minute into 60 seconds, a system we still use every single day. Their astronomical observations laid the groundwork for modern astronomy and astrology. And of course, their invention of writing changed the course of human history forever. Though their civilization eventually declined, conquered by successive waves of Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, the culture of Sumer was never truly lost. Their conquerors adopted and adapted their technologies, their religion, and their writing system. The echoes of Sumerian ingenuity reverberated through the millennia, influencing the great empires that followed, and ultimately shaping the world we know. They were the first to build cities, the first to write laws, the first to tell epic stories. They were the original pioneers, and their journey from simple farmers to master builders of civilization is one of the most incredible chapters in the story of humanity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to ancient Sumer. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more corners of the ancient world, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comments which ancient civilization you'd like to see us cover next. Until next time, stay curious.